Okay, so the question that you've done, Marcus, many countries have experienced a substantial rise in public fiscal deficit since 2008. Assess the factors which explain this trend in public finances in a country of your choice. So you've got 2008, the global financial crisis resulted in massive unemployment as well as foreign aggregate demand. The UK then used fiscal stimulus to try and increase aggregate demand in the UK to get the UK out of recession. Fiscal stimulus involves lower taxation as well as high government spending. We talked about the examples in the lesson on Monday. So VAT was reduced to 15%, and there was a significant increase in government spending in terms of there was infrastructure spending, there was subsidies that were spent as well. High government spending in the infrastructure as well as actually, forget what I've just said there, Marcus. You've written it down straight after it. The reason for this is to provide jobs in industries as well as lowering the hire of workers in public industries. However, this will lead to government spending increasing. Government spending incomes equation equals tax revenue minus government spending. The subsidy will force government spending very high, which would lead to rising budget deficits. It's below zero. Because you've also mentioned that the UK was in a recession, you could, and you might have mentioned this later, talk about falling consumer spending as well, leading to just lower tax revenues in general. So even though the amount of VAT is going down, there may also be reductions in the amount that some people spend. Another reason would be austerity. Austerity, which is contractionary fiscal policy, would improve tax revenue as the government would fall and the tax revenue would rise. In theory, this would lead to a rise in revenue. However, because the economy is in recession, or the rise in taxes, they would lead to a net leakage from the circular flow of income. So actually you've mentioned that part about the other taxes. This would lead to a further fall in aggregate demand, as the higher taxes would reduce the incentive to work. This would lead to a higher level of unemployment and therefore more government benefit spending as well as lower tax revenue. Therefore, even with the austerity, the fiscal deficit would rise. Was it just an assess question? Yeah, so you've got your two sides there, Marcus. To what extent would large imbalances on trade be a cause for concern? So if you're looking at trade imbalances, you could do this from why a surplus would be bad or why a trade deficit would be bad. If it's to what extent, you could then look at, it depends upon the causes. So are there short-term cyclical causes from a recession which may improve in the longer term? So it may be that you have a trade surplus because of your recession, so the negatives of that will disappear. But if it is longer term impacts because of structural issues, so it could be things like deterioration of capital, or it could be low productivity, then these may be more concerning, because this would then imply that if you do have a trade deficit, that it's a persistent deficit. And over time, this may lead to a weakening of your currency, which may lead to cost push inflation, which potentially would be more of a concern in the longer term.